Hello, friends. Welcome back to the Daniel-Mabry Project. This episode is with 5th District Congressional candidate Matt Hasty. I have to say a big thanks to Matt and also Mr. Hamilton, the Bespoke Barber. Check him out. Look him up on Facebook, I believe. You can definitely find him on Google Maps if you need a haircut. He's really, really kind individual. I really can't thank Mr. Hamilton enough for letting us use his space and his time, really. I really tried to be as objective as possible on this podcast and be straight down the middle and just ask Matt questions on topics that I thought were important to these days. I know that I probably could have elaborated more and probably could have asked some harder questions, some easier questions, whatever. Please feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments and ways that I can improve. This is the first time I've ever interviewed a quote-unquote political figure, even though Matt's not really the typical political figure. But yeah, I absolutely wish Matt the best of luck. And if any other political candidate would like to come on and give their pitch, give their points of view on certain issues, I'd love to have them on as well. Feel free to reach out to me on Instagram or via the comments. Love to link up with you in whatever way we can do it. Thanks to you, the viewer. And if you want to support me, there's ways to do that in the comments. If you want to support Matt, I'll also leave the link to his website down in the comments as well, or down in the description as well. So thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoy.
Are we recording now?
We are recording. We are recording.
Well, I'm going to take this thing off.
I'm going to do it.
Deal.
All right. We are live. We are recording. All right. Mr. Matt Hasty.
That's me.
Nice to meet you, sir.
Pleasure's mine.
I want to start this off
With a phone call?
with a phone call.
Hey, better than in the middle of it.
That's right.
Yeah, I was going to say, it will not ring again.
So me and Matt have been kind of in conversation via Facebook for a couple months now, I guess. And he's running for 5th District Congressional candidate. Is that, how would you say that?
Absolutely. Louisiana's 5th Congressional District.
Yeah. So just to kind of preference what's going on here, I was born in Alexandria, Louisiana, raised in West Monroe, Louisiana, and Ruston, Louisiana is home now. All three of those places are in the 5th District. I've pretty much lived in the 5th District for 20 plus years. My family owns a business in the district. I have many interests within this district. I am registered as a libertarian. I try to stay as moderate as possible throughout everything. I voted for Gary Johnson for the presidential election simply because I hated Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton, and Gary Johnson climbed Mount Everest. That was my reasoning. That's how political I get. So I really want...
You got to vote your heart.
Yeah, I want to make this interview as objective as possible.
Okay.
And I'm not really looking to necessarily debate you on anything.
Okay.
I just want to get to know you, who you are, and what your stance on certain issues are.
Absolutely. Ask me anything.
I have reached out to some other people via social media and gotten some other questions. So I'll reference I'll reference those people to some degree, maybe, what their association to the question would be, but I will not use any names.
Okay.
So first of all, where are you from, Matt?
I was born in Vicksburg, Mississippi. Lived there with my dad, my mother, and 3 brothers and 2 sisters. Then my parents got divorced when I was 10 years old. And my mom did what a lot of single mothers do. She moved back home with her mom. So we came to Alexandria and slept on the floor of my grandmother's living room for a few years. And then we could afford a trailer out past England Air Park, and we stayed in an apartment in Chateau Royale in Martin Park. Lived out in Ball, had a house out in Echo. Just moved around a lot. I mean, lived where you could.
Yeah.
So Mama was working 3 jobs with 3 kids.
Okay.
So.
How old are you?
I'm 40 years old. 40.
40 years old.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I should have said this earlier. If you look up Matt's website, go ahead and plug your website right now.
GoHasty.com. Go with an X.
There you go.
Go Hasty.
On the top of it, it says, committed, honorable, and open. Transparency is the name of the game. This was another reason why I was more willing to do this interview with a quote-unquote politician, because, again, of my political stances in general and try to stay out of it.
Yeah, I don't.
But, if you were, and we had the conversation on the phone a couple weeks ago, you said that you were willing to have the hard conversations.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Well, that's and I don't mean to
Yeah,
interrupt
you're
you,
fine.
but it's one of the reasons that our political processes have become so broken is that we classify each other. You say you're a libertarian, and there's so many people out there who instantly assume, you want to make all taxes illegal. You want to make sure that serial killers can own tanks. And there's so many people that don't understand the beliefs of their neighbors, because we have to categorize people these days in order to have conversations with them.
For sure.
So when you say you didn't want to talk about politics, I'm not mad about that. I've been trying to talk politics to people all over the district.
Yeah.
And the problem is that nobody can do it anymore. We're all so frustrated and angry that we can't push past it to listen. So what you were talking about with transparency, as a libertarian, I know it had to have appealed to you, because one of the core beliefs for me, not just for a libertarian, but also for any true conservative, is that we do not trust the government. The idea that the government is doing what's in our best interest is as abhorrent to the average American that, as almost anything else. And people outside of our borders don't understand that. Okay. But our elected officials have created this system that the only people that can get elected are the people that are within the system. And then once you're inside the system, it becomes a cycle of elected official all the way over to lobbyist. And now you're working at, Northrop Grumman on the board of directors. And, so it becomes, for lack of a better term for it, becomes a good old boys club.
Right.
And we've reached this point now with this worldwide emergency that our lack of trust in our institutions is being put on display. The lack of trust we have for the media that are supposed to be giving us direct information, the lack of trust that we have for our elected representatives who are supposed to be putting our interests first. And like we were talking about categorizing people. You see somebody with a mask, oh, well, that guy's, he's an idiot. He just believes what he's told. You see somebody without a mask, you say, okay, well, that person just doesn't care about other people, And when the truth is, we don't know what to believe. Now, how do you fix that? That's the question I always have to ask myself when I see a problem. How do you fix that? So in the military, the one thing you can always control as a leader is your own behavior. You set an example. As a leader, that's what you're expected to do. So in order to set an example as a congressman, 1, free app for any 5th district constituent who has a smartphone. You download it to your phone. You take a look at it. All you got to do is tap on it. You got 2 options. You can participate in any meeting that's on my schedule. And, of course, you'd have to be screened. We ain't figured out all the processes yet just to make sure that we don't get yelled at in every meeting. But then right after that is financial transparency. You click on it, it says bank account. Okay? You open it up. You can see every dollar amount that's been deposited to my account, from paycheck to donations to everything. Keep looking. You can see exactly where it goes. We bought this much in signs. We paid this much for transportation to go here. Now, explain to me why this is something that hasn't been discussed already. With the technology that we have in place, there's absolutely no reason not to do this. And as I ask you that, you already know the answer.
So, I think I'm going a different way than you're thinking.
Oh, okay.
So,
did I give you too much for?
No.
Question?
Whenever you're talking about that,
yeah,
my mind goes to the way I was raised and basically my father's mentality. You're talking about building an app. Who's going to pay for it?
Me.
You're going to pay for it.
Members of Congress make $150,000 a year. They also get paid $1 million a year for their staff. Okay, that's not counting any of the donations that we do. And when we talk about designing an app, there are organizations out there like the Lincoln Project. There are organizations out there like PolitiFact that would jump on the opportunity to have more transparency in government. So who's going to pay for it? I'm going to start, but we're going to find partners who think just like me and you do, that this government of ours has got it all twisted if they think they can stand on a podium and say, wear a mask, and I'm just going to give the North and South. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
We have to re-earn trust. And until you re-earn trust, you have to behave as if you're mistrusted. And after I get into elected to Congress, guess what? I'm mistrusted by every voter out there because now I'm in Congress. And I have to earn that back. Okay? But I want to do that. That's how we fix our government, is we get people in there with the mentality that you have to set an example if you want to change the future.
I definitely like that mentality. That was I really like that answer.
Well, thank you. Is it enough to make you see past the beard?
Oh yeah, I mean I'm a beard man myself. So
okay,
that doesn't bother me. All right, so you mentioned you're in the military. Why did you join the military?
It's an old, if you asked 100 people in the military why they joined the military, you're going to get at least 1,000 different answers. Because why you join is not necessarily why you stay in. Because once you get in the military, it's hard to explain to anybody that hasn't been in it. But the military sucks. You're waking up at 5:30 in the morning and you're exercising even though you don't want to. You're shaving even though you don't want to. So you have to find reasons to stay in beyond why you joined. And I tell you all that to tell you this: the reason I joined is because I was poor. I was dirt poor and I didn't have a lot of options.
Well, when you were kind of telling your upbringing, I had that question, but I kind of had assumed it already.
We grew up, at the time I was actually working at the Alexandria Convention and Visitors Bureau as a janitor. That's what I was doing right when I joined the military.
And how old were you at that time?
19.
So, and you committed your life to the military?
Well, I first joined up, my grandfather was in the Army, and he did exactly what I would do these days to somebody who said they wanted to join the Army. He said, no. You need to go look at the Air Force. The Air Force treats their people better. They get more money, all this stuff. So I looked into the Air Force, but then when I settled on the Army, now I don't consider it that. But when I went to the Army, I decided that I wanted to get a job skill, not necessarily just going in and jumping out of planes and doing all that stuff. So I pursued computers, which at the time, if you went into some high skill job like that, you had to join for 6 years. They weren't going to let you do 2 years and then get out and make a bunch of money. So I first joined up for 6 years and I got promoted very fast. So that by the time I hit my 10-year mark, I kind of had to make a decision, stay or go.
Gotcha. So I guess, so you just served for 6 years?
The first enlistment.
The first enlistment. So how long has your service time up to this point, I guess?
20 years, all added up. I joined 19 January 2000 and I retired 23 January 2020.
Wow.
So nailed it.
What rank did you get to?
I was a CW2, a Chief Warrant Officer 2. Are you familiar with most people?
Not at all.
And a lot of people even inside the military aren't familiar with warrant officers because we're very well kept secret.
I guess I want to put this information out there because obviously you are heavily promoting that you're a veteran, and I want other veterans to see that.
And anybody in the Army is going to know that they would be calling me Chief. See?
You're good.
I'm very clumsy. They would be calling me Chief. They know what it is. But so you have in the military, in the Army, you've got enlisted ranks, the lower enlisted, which is E1 private through E4 specialist, right? These are the grunts that you always see cleaning up the motor pools.
Right.
And then you've got the sergeants, which are sergeant, staff sergeant, surface class, all that stuff. Okay, that's the enlisted ranks. And then you've got the officer ranks, which are lieutenant, captain, colonel, general, all that stuff. Every officer outranks every enlisted, right?
Okay.
So the highest ranking enlisted guy is below the lowest ranking officer. Warrant officers they're two different kinds. You've got pilots, and pilots can come straight off the street and go through their training and stuff, obviously. But for technicians, which is what I was, each specific job within the military screens sergeants from that job field, and they make sure that they're the technical experts. You know, they have to be professional. They have to all that stuff. And if you get selected, then you go to another training course in Alabama and all this stuff. But then from then on, as a warrant officer, your job is basically to work directly for the commander of the unit and to solve his problems. I was a communications specialist, so my job was to look at a field problem or training exercise that's coming up in 6 months and look at it and say, okay, we're going to need this, 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 this. Does that make sense?
So was it like supply chain type stuff?
Well, we do have supply warrants, but for me, it was all communications.
Okay.
It was my job title was actually network management technician.
So you're like preparing to set up communications? Or?
Part of it was preparing, executing, and recovering.
Okay.
Are the three major phases of it. But preparing, you know, you got to find the. You don't want to get into it. It's a lot of nerd stuff. I can lose you on real quick.
I mean,
you got to get cut sheets for IP addresses, and you got to make sure all of the network devices are configured so that you can pull in secure.
So it's not necessarily like, is it like a physical thing, or is it like you're getting software and devices and stuff put together?
Both.
Okay.
Both. Because every Army tactical unit has what we call a WIN-T package. You know, the Army loves their acronyms. I can't remember what it stands for, and there's a lot of guys that are going to laugh at me for not being able to remember what it stands for. But every time, let's say, a military unit goes to the field and their job is to go out, find the enemy, and kill him, okay? They have to have a command post in order to do that so the commander can coordinate the actions. Well, these days, just like in the civilian world, everything is done over the network. Everything's done over we don't call it the internet because it's not the internet, it's our tactical network. Pretty sure that's actually in WIN-T somewhere. But each one of those devices, each one of the routers, each one of the computers, each one of the servers, each one of those has their own software. They have to be configured. And it changes, you know, each time you do a training exercise.
Okay.
And, you know, the more complicated the communications, the more complicated the preparation, all that stuff.
Fair enough.
I know it sounds boring, doesn't it?
No. I mean, that was my next question, was what your job was and what the responsibilities were. So
it's a lot of creative problem solving, which is why I have a problem with the idea that I have to be experienced in politics in order to, you know, fix what's wrong with politics.
Great, because I have a problem that because you were in the military, you think that you can be in politics.
Well, absolutely. Thank you for looking me right in the face and saying that. What we just talked about with the creative problem solving.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, and that's because I just see you were in the military, and so you think that you
now you can
more.
be in the government.
But that is why I ask, you know, what your job was, what, you know,
what makes you think that the
right? Because
X
my next
translates
question
to Y.
is like, did you have any other jobs outside of the military?
Oh, well, not before I joined the military. I mean, I was, you know,
right? No,
painting houses,
I'm not
working in cashier.
about that.
In the military, so when I say I was communications, that's what we call our MOS, our military occupational specialty. But depending on where you get stationed, you'll never do that job.
Gotcha.
So I've deployed 3 times. I've actually never deployed as my job. Every time the first time was as a civil affairs sergeant, which was interacting with the local populace and stuff like that. And then I was a platoon sergeant. Then I was an operations sergeant. So it's a lot about being able to analyze a situation and figure things out. What's the X factor is what they used to call it in Germany.
Gotcha.
So an X factor, I mean, that just means you can put that soldier. They're going to figure it out and they're going to make it happen. And it's hard to do politics because I don't like bragging about myself. You know what I'm saying? But I can do that. I'm very good at it.
So you had multiple deployments?
Oh yeah. One to Afghanistan, one to Iraq, and I went to. I was on a special forces base in Qatar.
So I guess when did Germany mix in there?
Oh yeah. So the first, just like we were talking about, you know, traveling to see the world and stuff.
Yeah.
I joined the military, you know, because I was poor and didn't know really what else to do, but I wanted to see the world. So when I joined the military, you used to be able to get a guaranteed station of choice, so that when you enlisted, you could request Europe or something like that. So my first tour of service was over in Germany. I was there from I was over there for 9/11, September 2000 until I think August 2002. I was in Eder Oberstein, Germany. And I went from there to DC, excuse me, DC, back to Germany, to Afghanistan, to Georgia, Germany, Iraq, Georgia. I mean, you want me to keep going?
Yeah,
okay.
for sure.
So Georgia, and then
Georgia, U.S. Georgia.
Oh yeah. I mean, I've traveled to the Eastern European Georgia, but I was never stationed there. And then after that time, I went to Qatar for 6 months, came back to Georgia, went back to Germany again. And then I got stationed in Manhattan, New York City for a year, actually. I had to travel a lot between Manhattan, Puerto Rico, and the Virgin Islands. And then I got picked up for the warrant officer thing we were talking about. So I had to go to Alabama for training, Georgia again. Georgia's the home for the Army's signal, just so you know, the communications corps.
Gotcha.
But then after that training, I went to Korea for a year, came back and got stationed in Georgia, and then got out of the Army. And when I immediately got out of the Army, so remember we said why I joined, I was poor. Okay, so, and you know, my family is not poor now, but they still, just like most people in this district, they're struggling to get by.
Yeah.
So the first thing I did when I got out was I decided to try to find a job that was going to pay me well, and I had one. I got one at JSOC up at Fort Bragg, making a lot of money, and I wasn't happy, you know.
Yeah.
I don't want to use this for money. You know, I see something wrong with my country. I'm firmly convinced I can do something about it, and I want to be able to look at myself in the mirror when I'm 60, you know, and say that I tried.
So, I mean, I can only imagine that through your travels and through your military experience, you literally encountered and developed relationships with people from around the world.
Oh yeah.
I guess, can you talk about maybe how some of just the multitude of personalities that you've interacted with have kind of shaped you, and like, you know, just maybe some of your experiences from overseas, whether it be in the Middle East or Europe or whatever, from your world travels?
Absolutely.
Kind of, it maybe pushed you to what you're doing now.
There's an old quote, I forget where it actually came from. I think it was Margaret Thatcher, but somebody said that Europe is built on history and America is built on philosophy. And it's something I read long time ago. And my experience is really, and it's because it's not just Europe, Asia's like that too, that those societies and those cultures they've progressed over the years through a kind of trial and error of governments.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And
well, I mean, there's churches there that are older than America.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so I think that it's hard to, you never want to speak in generalities. You know, you don't want to say Germans do this or Germans do that, because Germans are just as diverse as Americans, you know. But I think for the most part, there's an accepted mentality in Germany of, I'm willing to sacrifice a degree of my personal liberty for the good of the whole. And I think that's common across most European countries nowadays because, like I said, they've built it on their history. We've forgotten the fact that America is an experiment. People didn't sit down and write up this Constitution and walk away from it knowing that they had created the best government. No, they created a system that they knew was going to be a struggle for years and decades and centuries, because it's an idea. It's the idea that people can live together in a society while also prioritizing individual liberty, you know, to the point of personal responsibility, that the government is not responsible for your health, you know, and again, not to give you a $20 answer for a $5 question, but if you look at our history, you can see why it happened. If you go back to the New Deal, you know, we had the Great Depression. So of course, what does the government do? It says, we don't want to let people starve to death. Let's make the government bigger. You know, after the New Deal, or actually it was World War I, then the New Deal, then World War II, then the Cold War. I mean, as we progress, we see the government starts taking care of more and more things. And I think if anybody who studies history and you look back at the original intent, it's not hard to see where we've gone wrong, you know? So I think America in this world is a light. I mean, it's a beacon for people that want to be able to reach whatever their goals are. It doesn't matter, you know, whatever your dreams, you want to take care of your grandchildren, you want to be the most powerful person at Harvard, whatever it is. If you're willing to come to this country and work harder than the person beside you, do you know what I'm saying? If you're willing to work, if he's working 20 hours, if you're willing to put in 21, this is the country where you can succeed. That's what it's supposed to be.
Okay.
And that's the passion.
No, that's great. And I want to use that to roll into another question.
Okay.
We'll kind of get into some policy issues here a little bit now.
Sure.
Coming off of what you just said, this was a question that was given to me by a local business owner. There is an issue in this country of immigration to some degree. I, through my own experience, also believe that there is an issue with certain people who have come to this country and spent 15, 20 years laying low, never going to jail, working their butts off, building families here, and they still don't have citizenship. And I think that there's an issue there. And I don't know how familiar you are with the subject, but
I am.
just wanted to get your opinion on it.
Absolutely. So
maybe some steps we could go forward with it.
Sure. The military is not very conducive to, and trust me, I'm going to get to your point. I hate when you ask me a question and I start off on somewhere that seems way out there.
And don't apologize for being long-winded. This is
exactly
your
what you
show.
want? Okay, perfect.
How about this is your opportunity.
Because I'm getting into politics, man. I can talk.
That's right.
At the time, at my last marriage, the military is not conducive to marriage at all, but I was married to a Russian citizen. Okay. I met her when I was over in Germany. And being an American soldier in Germany, stationed on base now, and you get married overseas. So, based on the immigration law, she's a citizen, once you get married.
Right.
The amount of stuff that we had to go through just for her, she's a military spouse at this point, just for her to be able to come to the States with me is absolutely absurd. I mean, you're talking, I must have spent $1,000, and it took 6 months, easy. That's just one part of it, what you're talking about with the immigration. We all know the immigration system's broken. It's just like so many other things. We know our healthcare industry is broken. We know all this stuff, okay? But there's nobody taking a look at it. The administrative overhead is absurd, to an absurd degree, that what we deal with immigration. So that's one. Two, the people that have been here for 15 to 20 years who are out there every day and they're busting their hump and they're paying their taxes and they're productive members of society, they're positive members of the community. Those are, they're not Americans, but there's no reason they shouldn't be. There's no reason that if you come to this country and you're willing to work hard, what we do need to look at, and not just with immigration, with any citizen or non-citizen who comes to this country or state or region or whatever it is, and is just determined to live off of the benefits that they're provided. And I'm not speaking in abstractions. I have two very close members of my family who have addiction problems, and they're living large right now with their unemployment benefits. And I'm not saying we don't need the unemployment benefits, but I'm saying as we let our government transition from helping people to getting elected, these are the solutions that they're going to come up with. Whenever we see something like the unemployment rate is skyrocketing or the economy is crashing or something, instead of taking a look at the root cause, how can we set this up so that it's not going to be a problem a year from now? They only see till November. That's why we're getting these patchwork payments coming through the mail. We can't do that indefinitely. We know we can't.
Yeah.
And right now, people are depending on that money. So what happens when we rip the rug out from under them?
Yeah.
But there's no conversation about what happens after November because that's all anybody cares about. Do you see what I'm saying? So with the people who have been here 15 to 20 years and they're working, they're productive and everything, I think there should be a clear pathway to citizenship for those people, and it needs to be simplified across the board. I don't want a military soldier over in Germany doing more paperwork than an immigrant who's sitting here doing something. But what we do need to talk about, I can go off on immigration for a while. We need some common sense conversations. Okay, now. President Trump got elected talking about a border wall. Now, do we need a border wall? Do you know? Do we need a border wall? I'll tell you right now, I don't know. Okay, because the people who are making that decision, the people who should look you in the face and say we need a border wall, are the people who work at the Border Patrol. They need to look you in the face and say, hey, I need this and this to make my job easier. Okay, in order to do the job that you've given me, I need these tools. And if they say they need a wall, we need to build a wall. Period. If they say we need more drones, if they say we need this, they're charged with the protection of our southern border, and they need to have all the resources that they request. That's one. Two, we've got to have a common sense conversation about the immigration that's coming from South America and about the strain it is putting on our immigration system. Because what's happening because of policies in the past is that it's become very enticing to cross at the border. Because what the situation that we have now is that if you cross the southern border and you get caught, you claim asylum. That's what you have to do. You claim asylum. As soon as you claim asylum, they cannot cut you loose. Okay? They can't cut you loose. You have to be held until you get seen by an asylum judge, right? Mm-hmm. Backed up years. The judges are backed up years.
Yeah.
So what the Obama administration was doing was releasing them into the country and saying, hey, you have a court date on this date. Make sure you come back, and then just releasing them into the country.
Right.
Well, does that pass the common sense test? I mean, to you?
No.
Me neither. So what President Trump did that nobody's really talking about, because a lot of people after Trump, he talked to Mexico. And he got Mexico to set aside land on their side of the border so that they could be held there until they get seen. Now, how does the media portray that? Kids in cages. Yeah. Kids in cages. Yeah. Kids in cages. It's because nobody's being held against their will at the border. That's another thing that we all need to get into our mind, is that at any time you can withdraw your asylum claim and go wherever you want. Okay, but nobody's talking about that. All we talk about is the kids in cages. And instead of taking a look at the resources that are being restricted at the border, masks are the easy argument. Black Lives Matter is the easy argument. Kids in cages, that's the easy argument. Those are the things that we're given to argue about instead of taking a look at the deeper issue. I could just keep going.
Yeah, I mean, yes.
Makes sense?
Yeah, okay. To some degree. I definitely have some very good points there. We're going to keep switching it up.
Please.
I'm just going to bounce around to where we keep getting some different views here. So there's not necessarily an issue in this state, but maybe an issue in other states about gun waiting periods. There is no gun waiting period in Louisiana. If you go and purchase a gun, you pass a background check, you can take your gun home with you that day. What's your opinion on that? And do you think it should change?
Well, I mean, I guess the logic behind a waiting period is that if you want a gun and you're angry, that 3 days is going to help you calm down.
Right.
Well, I mean, and like I said, there's probably history behind this that I don't know. Maybe something horrible happened, but common sense, logic tells me that if you're mad enough to kill somebody, 3 days ain't gonna change your mind. Do you know what I'm saying? But it does restrict the constitutional rights of Americans. So is the juice worth the squeeze there, or are we going to restrict everybody's rights based on this one person who's going to be angry for 2 days and then forget about it? So that's one issue. But the other thing we need to have a conversation with about guns in this country is that there's no such thing as a gun without a background check. We all need to understand that. Nowhere in this country can you just walk in, get a gun, and walk out of the store, okay? The one exception that everybody talks about is the gun show loophole, okay? And like I said, a lot of people can't tell you what the gun show loophole is. Why we call it a gun show loophole is that if I go to a gun show to show off my personal collection of guns, okay, just to show Mr. Mabry exactly the guns that I have, and you come to the gun show and you say, man, that AR-15 is absolutely beautiful. No price on it. That AR-15 is absolutely beautiful. I'll give you $20,000 for it right now. I can sell you that gun.
Right.
Without a background check. That's the gun show loophole. Now, when you boil down the law to what it would actually do if you start trying to apply background checks to that, if you're my neighbor, if you're my brother, if you're my father, if you're my uncle, I can't give you a gun.
Right.
I can't sell you a gun because now one of us has to pay for a background check.
Right.
Okay? So common sense says dangerous people shouldn't have weapons. When I say dangerous, you're talking, convicted felons of multiple violent offenses. But what we can't do is just start drawing arbitrary lines in the sand. Mental health is the latest one. Okay. And if you take a look at the details of what people want to propose, you have to start asking these questions. Who decides if I'm mentally fit? Okay. Because that's the person you're trusting to remove my liberties,
right.
So who is that? And what's the appeal process? What if you're the authority and you're just mad at me? How do I go to somebody and say, hey man, this guy took my liberties away for no reason?
Yeah.
And there's no process for that. Okay. People just say, people with mental health conditions should not have access to weapons. And, on the surface, we can all agree, but depression's a mental illness. Anxiety is a mental illness. If you look in what do they call it? There's a MSM, I think DSM, the DSM-5 of mental health diseases.
Okay.
There's a book called The Psychopath Test. If you read it, the average person's got 12, 15 mental health issues. The author, I think, found 15 on himself. Okay, so how do you decide who's dangerous and who's not? Because you're talking about removing a constitutional right.
Right.
So just like with a lot of these conversations, I think they've been co-opted by people who make money and people who use it for power. They keep it real simple for the voters. If a problem has reached the national level of our government, by definition, it is a complicated problem because it hasn't been solved by the local government, state government, or individuals within a community. Okay, it's got to keep getting elevated. So there's no simple problems up at the federal level, no matter what campaign commercials tell you.
Hard to argue with that. What is your stance on marijuana, medical, recreational? Obviously, medical's, I believe, been passed in the state of Louisiana for a couple of years now, but there's been zero ability to access it up until recently.
Yeah, there's a doctor in Baton Rouge. I don't know if I can give him a shameless plug, but Dr. Chow in Baton. Now I'm worried I might not get his name right. Well, he's in Baton Rouge. He sees people. He has office visit. You have to pay for the office visit and everything. He evaluates your medical records, and then you get what's called a tincture. It goes underneath your tongue. I know about this because I was given medical marijuana by the government for my PTSD. I struggled with my PTSD for about the last year. I was in the military, and I mean, you're talking at one point I was taking pills that were just, a handful of pills because they give you something to treat your depression, your anxiety, your sleeplessness, your shakes. I had the shakes like nothing. And then they've got to give you pills to counteract the second, side effects of the first pills. Yeah. So eventually, through a lot of trial and error, my doctor wrote to the Pentagon and got special permission to prescribe me Marinol, it's medical marijuana. And now I take 2 pills. I take Effecture and I take Marinol. I think medical marijuana is another one of those things that is, who wins with illegal marijuana? There's 5 groups of people who win with illegal marijuana, okay? The private prison industry, the pharmaceutical industry, the alcohol industry, drug dealers, and politicians who make money on the other 4. That's it. Doctors want to use it for medicine. Veterans want to use it for their anxiety, for their PTSD, for sleep. Adult Americans want to use it for recreation. There's absolutely no reason for it not to be legalized other than those 5 people. So that's where I stand on it.
Would you make a push to make it recreationally legal?
Absolutely. Legalize it and tax it because we're about to need a lot of tax money.
I was about to say that just using other states' models,
absolutely,
particularly Colorado, they just had tremendous amounts of tax dollars that at one point I believe they had to give money back to their citizens, which is pretty unheard of.
And with the economy headed in the direction that it's headed now, we are about to need a lot of tax revenue. And if we don't do something like that, we're talking higher taxes elsewhere because the government's not going to reduce its size on its own. It's going to keep promising more because that's how they get elected.
So say recreational marijuana gets passed, it starts getting taxed. Where are you pushing those tax dollars?
To schools, education. Schools in the United States of America should be cathedrals. I mean, we talked about the European churches. I mean, if you've been over there and seen when you walk into some of these churches that were built in 1200 AD, people spent their entire lives mastering a craft just for the purpose of being able to make the perfect statue to put into a church. There's just care and love in every nook and cranny, and because you can tell the people who built that understood the importance of what they're doing. Their faith is what drives them to do that. Our education system, when you look at the amount of money and power and authority that we have in the world, for our education system to not be leading the way in every conceivable category it's an indictment of our priorities. I mean, you take a look at the spending, you take a look at the results. Tell me why our teachers aren't the highest paid people in our country. Tell me that. And correspondingly, they get the training and education needed to earn those paychecks. Okay? We talk now about kids learning online and kids not being able to go to schools. I mean, you've got some experts out there who, we can talk about internet access at a separate, if you want to talk about that, but anybody who's got internet, explain to me why the government can't hold training, job training, education. Hey, do you want to start a small business? Okay, here's a free online training course with the dean of the LSU School of Business, paid for by your tax dollars. I mean, explain to me why we're not reinvesting money back toward the people so that we can look long term and see return on investments. Because why we're not. It's the same thing I keep hitting homes, because nobody sees past November. Yeah. And in December, the only thing they're going to see is the next 2 years.
Well, and I mean, I kind of liked your 5 people analogy you had going there, because that goes for a lot more than just marijuana.
Oh, yeah.
It goes for a lot of things as well.
Oh, yeah. I can talk. Yeah, I can go on and on about education. We need to. The vast majority, all of the things that we have in our country that our government is handing, we need to rethink all of it. We need to rethink how we're thinking about it. We need to rethink the results that we're expecting from these programs. The world changes every 10, 20, 30 years, and we've just been progressively allowing the government to kind of do its own thing. And now we're at this point where, does anybody out there believe the government is doing what's best for them?
So we kind of referenced the option of marijuana there, and the tax dollars going to education. Do you see another avenue to raise money to get more money to education? Obviously, it seems as if the past, 5-10 years, Louisiana budget hasn't been the greatest, most beautiful thing in the world.
Yeah.
Do you see any other options there?
At the national level, absolutely. At the state level, I think there's a real conversation to be had about, how do you invest? Where's the future? If you stop and start talking to anybody about the economy and where industries are going to go in the future, okay, it's cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is not going anywhere. Okay, we know that. Network administration, those kind of technical positions, social media, graphic design, and you can go on and on. Renewables, I don't want to pull you off into a global warming debate, but if you believe in global warming or you don't, do you believe that oil is going to run out someday? Don't we all know that it's going to run out someday? So why are we not now spending time and money to invest in renewables so we don't? The debate about global warming is one thing, so it's either going to be a problem either 5 years or 50 years or 500 years,
well,
but we know it's going to be a problem. So
I try to look at it in this manner, and it kind of tackles 2 different subjects in the environment, quote unquote, and the job issue that we also have in Northeast Louisiana. Is diversifying the economy.
Yep.
I feel like our economy is diverse. Obviously, there are a million different types of services and businesses that are offered in the state, but the majority of the money is really going to oil and gas and shipping in the ports in South Louisiana, and it almost seems like culturally, economically, North Louisiana is a whole other world compared to South Louisiana. And
a lot of states are like that. That you've got the one region that's rich, for resources, and then you've got most of the. There's whole countries that are like that. But as I said, whenever we were talking about with reorienting the way we're thinking about things, what I was talking about with cybersecurity and network. These are schools that can be set up in any abandoned building with an internet connection.
Yeah.
And you put a video teleconference on the screen with an expert in the field. Spend 40 hours a week going to school and learning a trade. Whether it doesn't have to be cybersecurity. It can be a car mechanic, be an arc welder, be a pipe fitter, whatever it is. There's no reason for us not to provide these opportunities, especially in a region like ours where what's the median income? $32,000, $34,000? It's absolutely ridiculous, because we think that the easiest way to take care of those people is to provide them with handouts, to give them more money. Okay, to give them more reason to, hey, you can live off this. There's no reason to do this and that. What people need is opportunity. People need opportunity, and they need a chance to prove that they're willing to chase their dreams. They're willing to work hard. They don't just want a handout. They just want an avenue. Give me an opportunity to show you what I'm made of. And that's what we need to be doing. Open up those opportunities through education, through free, not community college, but skills training, if you have to do it online. Excuse me. But even as we talk about the poverty in the region, because businesses are not the enemy. Businesses are not, as we talk about, even when we say corporations and stuff like this, we just have to understand the mentality behind a business. The mentality of a business is to make money, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's America. It's one of the reasons we don't trust our media, is because our media is a business. We know that. And if I want to pull, let's just say Tesla, because that's the first business that comes to my mind. If I want to pull Tesla to Louisiana to set up a factory to build, their latest fire-breathing car or whatever it is, but I go to Tesla and I say, if you set up in Northeast Louisiana, your tax rate would normally be, let's say, 20%. Okay. If you combine your local, state, and federal taxes, this is how much money you'll be paying. Now, if you employ this many people, pay them this much money, provide these specific health care benefits, provide this specific child care benefits, we will reduce your taxes to zero. Now, all of a sudden, it becomes profitable for this business to treat its people better. And all of a sudden, you've got people have money to spend because they're getting paid more money. And, your economy starts to revitalize. Okay. And who loses in that equation? The government. It's the only people who lose. They lose tax revenue. That's it. And that's why I say we have to reorient our priorities away from what we've allowed them to dictate to us. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. So there may be some people out there listening and watching, and they're saying, you guys are talking about all the city folk all the time. Obviously, there is a ton of farmland in your district. What do you say to those people? How do you plan on helping them?
So there's a podcast out there that's the Delta Crop Podcast, because I'm very aware of my own ignorance. I know it might sound like I think I know everything, but trust me, when I run up against something I don't know what I'm talking about, you're going to see me very quickly go, I don't know what we're talking about. And one of the industries that I need more education on is Louisiana's agriculture industry. I know we're talking, it's a huge part of the economy. It's a huge part of the national economy, but specifically what I need education on are the issues that are being faced. So I contacted the Louisiana Delta Crop Podcast and actually asked them for some free education. And one of them wrote me back. It was the lady whose name I can't remember. But she wrote me back earlier this week and said that she was going to try to arrange something. So, nice. Well, and that's any industry, Yeah. If an owner of a small business wants to say, hey man, I want you to sit down and listen to the issues that my industry, that's what your representative should be doing. That's their job.
For sure.
So, did I answer your question?
Yeah, no, okay. You did. I mean, you essentially said you recognize you need more education on Absolutely. That, and you're obviously making plans to do so. So, yeah. Speaking on relationships, there's a new mayor in Monroe, pretty successful mayor over in Ruston. Obviously, there's larger other towns, maybe not necessarily larger. I guess Alexandria, Natchitoches, all in your area. Do you have any relationship with those mayors? Have you had any conversation with any of those people?
Mr. Ellis is a friend of a friend, actually. When I decided to run for office, I had him on text, and we made several appointments to meet up with each other so I could get his advice. But he was in the dead middle of the election, so we never did hook up. And then since then, I saw on Mr. Letlow's page that I think Friday Ellis is the endorsed one of the competition, which is fine. I bear no ill. You got to support who you're going to support.
For sure.
No big deal. But the one mayor, I wrote the mayor of Alexandria. I tried to make an appointment because I was hoping to hold a town hall about racism. And I went to and this was at the time that we were talking about the statues in front of the city. When we have these conversations about race, whenever something comes up with a statue, for me, it's a perfect opportunity to have a conversation. Let's all get together somewhere and let's have a conversation about what you think, what I think, and let's listen to each other.
Yeah.
Of course, I never heard back from him. Went to see the mayor of Grambling for the exact same reason, but and he was very nice. He gave me a card. We sat in his office and talked for about 20, 30 minutes, and he said he would be willing to host it, a town hall, but Mr. Martin Lamel he works at Grambling. I forget exactly what his position was, and he's also running for the seat. So
Gotcha.
It's kind of an awkward position for the mayor to be in.
Yes.
I've spoken with, tomorrow we're having a town hall in Winfield, and I spoke to the Winfield chief of police. I spoke to the Wynn Parish sheriff. As I work my way around the district, trying to get, that's when I start to interact with those local authorities. And we're trying to hold a town hall in every parish. So,
well, that a question got brought up while I was sitting here earlier. I noticed that you are kind of, at least currently, kind of attacking those smaller towns.
Absolutely.
Is that a plan? Do you think that the small towns will carry you through, or
Well, I can't tell you, it's OPSEC. No, so that's a military term. It means operational security.
Okay.
It means like I can't tell you my plan.
That's fair.
I'm just kidding,
That's
man.
fair.
No, so I think my mentality is that if I start putting up signs in Monroe, in Alexandria, and in Bogalusa, they're kind of going to get lost in the sauce. You know what I'm saying? Like there's a lot going on inside the city, and in the travels that I've had, it's not difficult to see the different mentality of people that live in a city than people who live in the rural areas. And the people who live in the rural areas are much more fed up with the government, much more fed up with the government. If you live in a city, like I said, I lived in New York City for a year, those people that live in that city, they've kind of accepted a society of, I'm willing to pay higher taxes so that I can have this nice subway.
Yeah.
I'm from the country, and that's I'm not willing to pay higher taxes.
Right.
I got a car. I'll drive my car.
Yeah.
But I think the plan is to start to get the word out, because my problem is nobody knows who I am. I've been gone for 20 years.
Yeah.
Right. So what I want to do is try to get my name out there first in those rural areas and let people hear me talk like you're hearing me talk, and hopefully you can see I mean what I say and I say what I mean.
For sure.
And once people can see that, I think we'll start to see people inspired, and we'll start to see people jump on the train. And once we get a following going, then we can go into the cities and, not necessarily be drowned out.
Fair
Does
enough.
that make sense?
Yeah. You got to start somewhere.
Absolutely.
Let's see here. You mentioned racism. We'll just go that route. What was your plan for those things? What's your
okay, so
maybe
I'm gonna answer you in probably the worst way possible.
No,
okay?
I mean I didn't really know how to ask the question. So
no, you're fine. I'm gonna give you a math problem. You ready?
Okay.
Have you ever heard of the bat and ball problem?
I'm not familiar.
Okay, so a bat and a ball together cost $1.10.
Okay.
Okay, the bat costs $1 more than the ball. How much is the ball?
10 cents.
Okay, so if the ball is 10 cents and the bat costs $1 more than the ball, then the bat is $1.10.
Okay.
$1.10 plus 10 cents is $1.20. Okay? You thought it was a dime too, didn't you? Everybody who's listening to that who heard the bat and ball part, your first reaction for your brain is to say 10 cents. Okay? And even if you say that to somebody and say this is a trick, and then you give them the problem, a lot of the times people still can't see any other option but 10 cents. It's 5 cents. If the ball is 5 cents and the bat is $1 more than the ball, then the bat becomes $1.05 plus 5 cents ball is $1.10. Now, go ahead and pause it if you have to pause it and work it out on a piece of paper, because a lot of people get mad at this problem. Okay, but work it out on a piece of paper. Trust me. Because, and the reason I answer your question like that is, by any definition, our brains are being assaulted by millions of pieces of information every second. Millions, okay? And our subconscious can process something like 500. Okay, that's just the subconscious part of our brain that controls our breathing and stuff. Consciously, you can handle about 10. Okay, that's how much you can consciously process your brain. So in order to function in the world where all this information is coming to you at any time, your brain creates shortcuts. Okay, you saw that nice easy problem of $1.10, $1 more and all that stuff, and your brain jumped. It took a shortcut. Okay, because your brain is accustomed to having to deal with things as they're presented to you. Okay, do you see where I'm kind of getting to this?
Right.
Okay, and we all need to understand, everybody, black, white, Hispanic, Asian, doesn't matter, everybody in this entire world needs to come to grips with the fact that as a human being, you have bias. We all have bias. All of us, every single one of us, okay? And it doesn't make you evil. It doesn't make you wrong. It just makes you a human being, because we all prefer people that look like us. It's called a mirror bias. And if you need proof of this, all you got to do is walk into any high school lunchroom. Any high school lunchroom, you're going to see black kids on one side and white kids on the other, okay? And this is America. They can, you can sit with whoever you want, but instinctively, we prefer people that look like us, okay? So that's one. Now let me give you number two. As a white man, you walk into a room that has 99 black people in it. Do you notice? Do you notice your skin color? And are you comfortable? Okay? And these are two questions everybody out there's got to ask themselves. okay? Because your first reaction is to do that thing that says, well, I'm not a racist. Of course I'd be comfortable, okay? But you got to be honest with yourself, right?
I mean, my mind goes where I think you're going, and that the role is reversed on a daily basis.
That is how black Americans live in this country every day. They're 13% of the population. Now, add on top of that, the historical context of black Americans, okay? That level of empathy with black Americans is what we all need to get through to our mind. Now, I'm going to go to the other side of it with you, okay? Which is to say what black Americans need to understand. What black Americans need to understand is that I'm white and I grew up poor, okay? My entire family is white and grew up poor. If you're in Louisiana's 5th District, the odds are, it doesn't matter if you're white or black, you're poor.
You're poor.
Okay? And it's not something that's conducive to a conversation for a black person to look at a white person they don't know and say you're privileged. It's not conducive to a conversation. I understand what they mean. They understand that mirror bias that we were just talking about, and the fact that the vast majority of avenues to power are controlled by people that look like me.
Yeah.
Okay, I understand what they're saying, but what I'm saying is for somebody that wakes up in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning, works all day, and then comes home at the end of the day to deal with their family and their house and everything like that, for somebody to walk up to them on the news and say, you have white privilege, it's not something that they're going to listen to, okay? Because I don't know anybody that's from this district that has privilege. We've all struggled to reach where we got to go. But that's the problem we have right now with race in our country, is that no one is listening. No one is talking. It's all about, here is my opinion and you're going to take it. Yeah. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And
you're wrong, I'm right.
I was stationed in, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Just like the whole mentality, you're wrong, I'm right. Then there's no in between.
Yeah. There's no conversation to be had. Yeah. It's just, you're on my team or you're not on my team. That's it. Mm-hmm. And that is the culture that either gave rise to our politics or our politics gave rise to that kind of culture. But the result is the same. It doesn't matter where it started, the chicken or the egg. You know what I'm saying? We're still in this situation now where we're not listening to each other and feeding all the people who are profiting from it. So I think when I was in Georgia, when I was an instructor for 2 years at the Army Signal School, and when I joined the military, I was 19 years old. I might have interacted with 10 black people in my life. Seriously. And most of the people I interacted with were black. They either stole from me or they were not nice to me. That was my experience with black Americans. And then I joined the military. And very quickly you learn in the military that your skin color does not matter. It does not matter. Very quick. I mean, that's one, I'd say that's almost the first lesson in basic training. And it's reinforced everywhere in the military very quickly. You still got, like we were talking about, you don't want to speak in generalities because of course you got racists in any million group of people. But for the vast, what color is the soldier underneath that flag? Asked no veteran ever. We don't care. But I was sitting in this training at Fort Gordon when I was an instructor, and it was right after Barack Obama had gotten elected. And if you remember, I'm not sure, but when George W. Bush was president, especially in the later years of his presidency, he was not popular. Not popular at all. They were tearing him up all over, late night, and everybody thought George W. Bush was. I met George W. Bush. He's not stupid, just so you know. But everybody thought he was. But we were getting some equal opportunity training at the time. Military, you got to do it every quarter. And the equal opportunity trainer stood up and said, well, because now the president's a black man, any disparaging remarks about the president will now be treated as equal opportunity remarks. And immediately I was like, wait. Now because the president's a black man, we got to start treating it different. It doesn't make any sense to me. And I looked around the room, and it was the first time I had noticed in this unit that there were about 40 people in this room, and there were 3 white people. I had never noticed it before. And then that was the context that led me to start thinking the way we just spoke about 99 people in a room and everything. And I pursued it. I read Michelle Alexander. I read W.B. Du Bois. I've read The New Jim Crow, which was the Michelle Alexander. And I've got a stack of books that I'm trying to work my way through, because we have to start communicating about our racial issues, okay? Whether you think our racial issues are everywhere or you think they're nowhere, the bottom line is that they're here, either the reaction to the issues or the issues themselves, and we're not going to solve them by yelling at each other. We have to be able to talk to each other. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, no, definitely. Okay. That was great. I like to just keep jumping around.
Go ahead, man.
Why? Why leave Georgia? Why come back to Louisiana? Why run for Congress? Why?
Because I can. Because I can fix it. I really think I can fix it.
What motivated you to do it? Maybe the better question. What
I
motivated you to leave Georgia and come back to Louisiana?
You mean at that moment, or do you mean in general?
In general.
Okay, so I consider myself a student of history. I love history. I love understanding how we get to the places where we are now. And, history is just full of lessons if we can actually just pay attention to it. And historically, if you look the direction that our government is heading and the direction that our country is heading, it's untenable. It's something that we cannot keep going this direction. We all know it. And that's the other thing that drives me crazy is that there's 327 million people in this country, and I guarantee you there's probably not 1,000 of them who think everything's going great. So we all know we're going in the wrong direction, but we just don't know what to do about it. We're given these two choices every time, and it's like, do you want me to punch you in the face or do you want me to kick you in the face? And there's so many people just throwing up their hands and not seeing any other options. But as I talk to you, and as I said a minute ago, as you listen to me, I hope you can see I mean what I say and I say what I mean. And I have honor and I have integrity and I have the values that have been given to me by the military. And I'm not afraid. I once got my tail end chewed. Are we PG or G?
Oh, you can say whatever the hell you want to.
I once got my ass chewed by a command sergeant major at Fort Campbell. Right after his deployment, he had this huge scar on the side of his face. And I mean, this was in 2003, and it was the worst ass chewing. I wanted to cry. It was the worst ass chewing I've ever received in my life. And I've never been afraid of anybody since. I mean, even when you go down range, you're not necessarily scared of an individual as much as you're scared of, bombs and attacks.
Right.
But as far as face to face, that's how I know I can walk into Congress and look somebody in the face and say, I don't care how you've been doing things.
Yeah.
I don't care. If what we have now is a result of how you're doing things, you're wrong. I'm not wrong. You're wrong.
Yeah.
Okay. And when we say why, I could, talk about it for hours, but the simple answer to that question is because I can do it. I know that if I get into Washington, D.C., if I get into U.S. Congress, we can fix our government. We will inspire the country.
Did you have a specific event that fully inspired you to make that last push, or you think it was just like a kind of a culmination of things?
Well, the mentality of trying to fix my government has been there for a long, long time. It's been there for years. But why now in particular was a friend of mine that I was stationed with in Germany 20 years ago. He's now a campaign manager up in, I think it's Illinois. And I was just kind of talking about it because I had planned on running in 2 years, after this, because I just got out of the Army in January. I just got a lot of family stuff going on. Excuse me. But as the more I talked to him about it, he said, Doc Abraham's retiring. There's all this frustration right now with the government. At the time, the riots were going on, and even now with the pandemic, people are sick of it. People are sick of it, and we're ready to have another option. And I just think now is the perfect time. If I can get the word out there.
Yeah.
If Dan-Mabry's viewership can just skyrocket up to about 770,000 people, all of it in the 5th District.
That would be incredible. I would probably never leave Louisiana.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Do you have any ideas for social equality programs? That was another question.
Are we live streaming or?
No. It's all.
Nerd, bro.
I can't say I am.
But I think you were asking about social problems, and you said to promote equality.
Yeah, and I guess the question was posed to me was like social equality programs was the question. I don't really know how to word it necessarily.
Well, and that's so. Are
it
we
is
talking
kind
about
of
affirmative action?
I would say it is kind of a vague thing now that I speak.
Well, that's all right. So affirmative action. If we assume that's what it's like, I said, we can talk about anything.
Yeah.
I don't care. I think we all need to, when we talk about race in this country, one of the things that we all need to remember is, one, we didn't all start from the same place. Okay, especially for some minority groups, there's a generational limitation of wealth and limitation of opportunities. And what I'm talking about is, I mean, the New Deal was rewritten to make sure that certain black farmers were not included in it. And I mean, that's just kind of how the policies were right up until the Civil Rights Act and beyond. Now, that's one aspect of it. The other aspect of it is we all have to remember that the college kids who are coming out of high school today, they work just as hard as the white students, okay? If you combine effort, okay? And we can take a look at that black student and say, historically, people that looked like him struggled more. Today, that might not be true, okay? Today, to make an assumption about someone's life based on their skin color is the exact opposite direction that we need to be heading. Okay, so I've got my problems with it. I really think that if we do need to appreciate the historical context of our race problem, because it's not widespread enough, and we need to be educated and we need to be talking about it. When we start talking about social equality, if we're talking about like poverty, because a disproportionate amount of minorities live in poverty, I think that if you address poverty just because they are disproportionately affected, they're also going to disproportionately benefit. If you start addressing poverty at that level by economic bracket instead of by racial bracket, you're going to see that the rising tide raises all boats. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So a lot of the times people want to pair incorrectly race with poverty, okay? And it's like I said, you don't want to speak in generalities, but there's a disproportionate number of minorities affected by poverty. But if you address poverty beyond racial lines, that means that disproportionately minorities would benefit. We've just got it. There's certain conversations that we need to have about race, and there's certain conversations that we need to pull race out of the conversation. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. And it's easy for a white man to say that. I know that because, if you're a black man in America, in some case, maybe everything's about race. Maybe that's the way you live. I don't know. But I do know that we can't eliminate prejudice by switching prejudices, and we can't eliminate bias by switching biases. We're just trying to balance out two bad things to equal a good thing, which if you're raised like I was, two wrongs don't equal a right, Mr. Mabry.
Well, and this is to go off of what you were saying and to go off of my previous podcast, the one that came out just before this with TJ Pittman. I don't know what questions to ask because I am not a black man. Exactly. And I don't have enough black friends. And that is something that me and TJ kind of pulled out of me is that, I don't have enough friends of color.
And it's a problem. It's not just you. I mean, and it's because your parents, your grandparents, your great-grandparents, all of us in this region, you're in a suburb that's mostly people that look like you. You grow up in a neighborhood that's mostly people that look like you. You go to a school, So as you grow up, you just don't make those connections. That's why I was so lucky to be in the military and I've got great friends that are black. I got great friends that are gay. I got friends that are transsexual. I got friends that are Russian, that are Cuban, just in traveling the world, being able to meet people, you don't have to agree with people to be their friend. You don't. It's okay. We can completely disagree about everything and then just have a beer.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that. We've forgotten that in our country. But I think the questions, we have to involve black Americans in these conversations more. It's very difficult to have conversations about race as two white men sitting here, which is one of the reasons I reached out to the mayor of Alexandria. It's one of the reasons I reached out to the mayor of Grambling. I didn't tell you this, but I also reached out to Candy Kristoff. I reached out to Martin Lamel. I offered to co-host a town hall with them on race, so we can get out there and start trying to talk about it. Because I don't want to hold town hall on race as a white man. You know, it's like I don't want to be there lecturing people about our race issues. But
and that because whenever you were telling me that you wanted to hold a town hall on racism, I was like, if it's just you.
Yeah,
like how many people are really going to show up?
With somebody, you know what I'm saying?
That makes a lot more sense.
Like, hey, come listen to the white guy tell you about racism in America.
And
I don't want to, but I do want to participate in the conversation. I've done research. It's become a passion of mine to understand this problem, and I still don't think I'm not saying I understand it, but I'm saying I'm thirsty for knowledge. Yeah. And definitely. I don't think it's something you can read in a book. I think it can only get better through conversations.
I guess maybe to just throw it out there, like what do you say to the people of the Black Lives Matter who are, not necessarily violently protesting, but there was a Black Lives Matter rally in both Monroe and Ruston. I guess what would be a message to those people?
We were talking about it a little earlier about the easy arguments that we're given.
Yeah.
Right. So the pandemic's going on right now, and the easy argument we've been given to go at each other is masks. Are you wearing a mask? You're not wearing a mask. And in every complicated issue, like we were talking about immigration, kids in cages, in every complicated issue, it always gets simplified. It gets simplified. I don't know if it comes from the politicians or from the media and they just feed off each other or what, but all of these complicated situations get boiled down into these simple sides. Either you're Black Lives Matter or you're Blue Lives Matter. Okay, either you support the protesters or you hate the protesters. And the world is just more complicated than that, okay? I believe Black Lives Matter. I believe Blue Lives Matter. I believe that Black Americans right now are feeling the effects of that unconscious bias that we talked about. I do believe that police are unfairly being targeted because of some of the interactions that they're having with civilians. Okay, I'm a veteran. I got a lot of friends that are police officers. And some of them I don't think should be police officers. I really don't. I don't think they have the right mentality for it. But the vast majority of police that I know, they're the same as, so they want to serve their communities. They want to get out there and they want to help people. To protest is every American's right. Every American's right to peacefully protest. And we should all defend and encourage that. Okay. Violence in any form is going to be met with, police response. That's just part of living in a society. You start burning things up. We're not just going to walk away unless you burn things up. But instead of having a look at, there's this concept that I learned over the years. It's called double loop learning. You ever heard about it?
Not familiar.
So, it's an idea about institutional learning that says when something goes wrong, you don't focus on the immediate effects. You have to try to figure out what caused it. And as an example, let's say you start a new business and it's a storage warehouse or whatever. On Monday, all of a sudden, a fire breaks out in your closet, down the road. So you go in there and you put out the fire and you put up a smoke detector. You close the door. 2 days later, another fire starts in a different room. So you put in the smoke detector, you put in the, all that stuff, close the door. A week later, you're having fires show up at different closets every day, okay? Single loop learning is just putting fire extinguishers in there, putting the smoke detector in there. You want to make sure you're ready when the fire starts, okay? Double loop learning is saying, why are these fires starting? Okay, what's going on in this building's electrical system or whatever it is that's causing fires to go on so we can fix that. The protests are an effect. Okay, they're not a cause. The protests are the language of people who do not feel that they're being heard otherwise. Okay, and the violence is the same. Martin Luther King said a riot is the language of the unheard. Okay, but under no circumstances can violence be tolerated. Okay, that's just part of living in society. You can't run around and burn things up because you're mad. But we have to look past these simple arguments. You support Black Lives Matter? No, I don't even want to talk to you. You support Blue Lives Matter? No, I don't even want to. We have to get past these and see the deeper issues that are causing the results that we're seeing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. No, I couldn't agree more. I guess do you have a plan to look past, like how we can get past that?
So
to have
I
some
do
common
believe,
ground?
as I said, I've got a lot of friends who are police, and we talked about it, but I do believe we need to examine nationwide how we are overseeing our police and how we are correcting their behavior and things, because 99% are out there acting honorably, but for that 1% out there, everybody needs to understand that police in America are uniquely empowered to remove the liberty from American citizens based only on their judgment. Okay? And if we understand that about police, we need to understand that the standard of behavior for those police officers needs to be much higher. I'm talking about professionalism to the point of, not even being able to say a cuss word. Right. That's an extreme example, but that's what I'm saying. Just being professional as you can.
To get spit in the face and smile.
Exactly. Well, and it sounds terrible because a police officer is a person too. You don't
Right.
ever want to put anybody in that position.
Right.
But if you're a police officer, you've volunteered to do a job where you're going to, every day you interact with somebody, they're having a bad day. A police officer never talks to anybody when they're just like, oh, I'm having a great day. How are you, officer? No. People call the police when things are wrong, right? So they show up on the scene and immediately everybody's pissed off, okay? Because something's going on that's making everybody stressed out.
Right.
And police have to be in there to deal with that. And they're just people like me and you. Did you know every police officer in the country works 12-hour shifts?
Did not.
Every police officer in the country. 12-hour shifts. And if you talk to them about it, they don't really see a big deal about it. Now, I don't want to speak for them, but as somebody who's worked 6, 8, 12, 24 hours, 36, 48 at a time, I will tell you that after a while, a 12-hour shift will start to wear on you.
Yeah.
Okay? And in a situation where you're walking into a location
You
that's
start
full
to
of,
get a little salty yourself.
you know, if you're walking into somewhere that's stressful, how long is it going to take before you get stressed?
Yeah.
You know, and then things can escalate from there. So I think we need to evaluate how we are correcting bad behavior from police officers. I had a friend that threw me this idea of something called the Uniform Code of Police Justice, just like we have the Uniform Code of Military Justice. And in the Uniform Code of Military, the UCMJ, there's 3 types of punishment. You've got a summarized Article 15, you've got a company grade, and then you've got a field grade, each with, you know, different levels of severity. But there's a code out there that's published that tells you exactly what behavior is unacceptable, exactly what behavior you should be, you know, and we've got philosophies of behavior, we've got creeds, we've got, you know, on and on talking about the honor and being able to serve. I think we need to reorient our police culture in a way that we can reestablish that, okay? And police culture needs to understand that there's a lot of lost trust in those minority communities because they don't feel like the police have their best interests at heart. And just like with politicians,
Let's say
we have to re-earn that trust.
you need to have that mentality that
Yes.
you're being untrusted.
Yeah.
I like that. It's a great place to start, I believe.
Thank you.
We're starting to run out of time here, so I'm going to ask a couple more questions and we'll wrap it up.
Sure.
I had a question from a military veteran, basically asking if you had plans to prioritize veterans affairs. You know, I've heard, I don't have personal experience, but I've heard about, you know, troubles with the medical,
The VA?
Yeah, the VA. I don't know if there's options for you to help out there or not. I just wanted to get maybe if you had any plans
So
to help veterans and that kind of deal.
So we've been at war now since 2001. We are currently in the longest war in the nation's history, fought by the smallest percent of the population because we have a volunteer force. We've been making do with, and you got to remember, 2003 to 2009, we were in Afghanistan and Iraq. By the way, we're still in Bosnia. By the way, we're still in Kosovo. 800 bases. That's how many the U.S. military has outside their borders. 800. Okay, Russia, France, and is it Great Britain or Germany? Russia, France, and Great Britain combined have about 30. Okay, so we need to reorient our idea about what our military is protecting because the men and women of our armed forces raise their right hand and they don't swear allegiance to the people. They do not swear allegiance to to Congress. They don't swear allegiance to the president. They swear allegiance to the Constitution of the United States and to defend it against all enemies, foreign and domestic. That is not a mission that is conducive to 800 bases outside of our borders. Next year, September 12th, 2021, is when you're going to start seeing all of the military veterans who joined on September 12th, 2001 start to retire. They're going to hit their 20-year mark, and they're going to start to retire. Beyond that, I can tell you as someone who has been in the military, there are a lot of broken soldiers, a lot, especially with PTSD, back problems, neck problems. You're talking there are guys coming out who've had 10 deployments, okay? We have to reorient how we are taking care of our veterans now because if we don't fix it now, we're going to have to wait until it's an emergency, and it has to be emergency funded. The conversations that we have about our veteran affairs always seems to be just throw money at it, throw money at it and we'll see, they'll take care of themselves. We need to rethink the VA as a whole. We need to think about the quality of people that we have running it, the quality of people that we have working in it, and exactly what the mission of the VA is. Because if it's not taking care of the welfare and the health of our veterans, we need to figure out how to make it happen. Okay? But just like with every other branch of our government, every other department, if you're not meeting the intent, then you're a waste of money. And we can use it elsewhere.
Yeah,
definitely. So the short answer is we are not taking care of our veterans the way we should. It's only going to get worse. So how do we fix it? They do need more money, obviously, but the director of the VA needs to be someone who, you might consider bringing in somebody from the private sector, just in efficiency, and the idea that you give someone who has experience in making large organizations effective and saying, I want you to figure out how to effectively take care of our veterans, and then take all their suggestions.
Yeah.
Everything within reason. But we've got to figure out how to do it now, because starting next year, it's only going to get worse and worse and worse.
All right. We'll address the big elephant in the room.
Come on with it.
COVID-19. Obviously, it's affected Louisiana pretty significantly, as well as the United States and the world as a whole. Obviously, there's a lot of people who've lost their jobs through this thing.
And loved ones.
Yeah, and loved ones for sure. Do you have any ideas as to, let me reference the word itself.
Okay.
COVID unemployment assistance was really the question that was raised.
One of the great, first of all, when we talk about the pandemic, everybody needs to understand that two things are true, and they can be true at the same time. Okay, one, the pandemic is serious, and two, it's being exploited. We all have to accept that both of those things can be true. Okay, but the COVID unemployment insurance it's a classic example of short-term government thinking. Okay, we know we can't keep paying people to prop up the economy. It just can't happen. If we just keep printing money and everything, inflation's going to rise. Our credit rating's going to drop, and you can take a look at what happened to Greece back in 2012, I think it was.
Let's say it wasn't that long ago.
Well, and that's what I'm saying is that's what can happen, and it happens like that. So I think the other flawed mentality that we have is that this is only going to be here a few months. It's right around the corner that this will be gone. We need to start adapting ourselves to the idea that this is going to be here for a year or years. Okay. Now, is it going to be like that? I don't know. Nobody does. But we need to, in this situation, we need to be planning for the worst and hoping for the best. Now, that means reorienting parts of our economy so that people can do them remotely. You can learn skills remotely. You can start separating people if they're in a waiting room. You can start figuring out how to, and it's hard to put a plus on such a terrible thing, but the good news is we're at a point in our technological advancement where the internet is indispensable, where we can use the internet for a lot of these things. And we don't have to worry about if you need to go to, nobody wants to go to school online because it's less effective than, but I think instead of unemployment insurance, we should have free online job training. And in the meantime, you can't eat free online job training. I recognize that, but I also recognize that the unemployment benefits that we're sending out right now are ridiculous. You're talking people are making $50,000 a year on unemployment benefits.
Right.
Okay. But we have to differentiate between the people who need help and the people that want help.
How do we do that?
That's a good question. You cannot do it in bulk. You cannot do it in bulk. That's the big mentality everybody's got to get with. The military especially they don't deal with one person. They deal with 1 million. They deal with 1,000. They deal with 100.
Everything's uniform.
Exactly. And so if 20 people have this problem, we're going to train everybody. 100 people can go through the training. Sorry about that. But when we talk about how to make sure that the benefits are not being abused, you're going to have to, I just keep seeing the word, you're going to have to reorient your state government so that they're not just issuing paperwork, sign here, come back on this date, and this. No, you're going to have to sit down and almost be a social worker and say, okay, did you go here at this? Why didn't you go to this job interview? Okay, what happened at this job interview? How are we going to do better next time? And you help people to get on their feet, okay? Because the mentality that we need to have with all of our tax-provided benefits is we are going to teach you to fish. We are not going to give you a fish. Does that make sense?
No, I definitely get behind that.
With the COVID, I don't dismiss the idea of sending out some kind of a stimulus payment outright to avoid absolute catastrophe, but I think we've already gone too far.
Yeah.
So to go any further at this point, we're just kicking the can down the road, and the more we kick it, the more steep the incline gets.
Do you think the state should be open? Do you think the country should be open? To what degrees?
There's not.
Obviously, today is like August 5th, 6th, something like that.
Yeah, there's not any single point in this country where that decision should be made for every other part of the country. There's no part of the country. So if President Trump wants to stand in Washington, D.C. and say the entire country should shut down, okay? The mayor of Louisiana should be able, the mayor of Alexandria should be able to take a look at his city, his situation, and say, no, I think we can keep our economy open without sacrificing people's lives, okay? Because you've lived in Louisiana, okay? Wynn Parish, as compared to New York City, the mentality that we have of these national level solutions to these problems, all of the information should be flowing down, and the decisions should be made at the local level. And we say the lowest level possible.
I was just about to say that. I heard that on the radio yesterday.
The
From a
lowest
military
level
guy,
possible.
the problem should be solved at the lowest level possible.
And that's
And I was
exactly
like,
right.
Man,
And
that's
and that's
beautiful.
how. Remember, we were talking about at the federal level. If a problem gets to the federal level, we already know it's complicated, right?
Yeah,
and that's because you should be solving it down at those local levels. And if it makes it all the way, so even even at the state level, the governor saying we're stopped here, everybody shut down. The mayor of Winfield should be able to make decisions for his community based on the information he has, based on the resources that he has, And maybe there's a role for the governor or the governor's staff to make sure that those local towns have a plan. What are you going to do if a teacher shows up sick? Are the kids going to be quarantined for 2 weeks? Are their families going to be quarantined for 2 weeks? Let's walk through your plan and what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Somebody should maybe make sure that happens. But the idea that from the national level or even the state level, you're being dictated on how to handle this emergency within your community. There's an election coming up, and everybody wants to be seen that they're doing something, and
sure.
Nobody cares if it's the best thing. They just want to make sure that they're being seen doing something.
Well, I'll wrap it up here. I really appreciate your willing to sit down with me and answer some questions, hard, easy, whatever.
It's a great conversation.
I appreciate you, man. We'll end it with you giving your pitch. Why should we vote for you? What separates you from the rest of the candidates? I know it's a relatively large field.
Yeah.
5 or 6 other competitors.
We've got 3 other Republicans and at least 2 other Democrats. There might be a third in there. I'm not sure.
So,
you don't ever want to go into a sales pitch by saying this is going to be easy. But I think it's a common sense fact for all Americans that we all know what we're doing is not working. We all know that the direction that our country is heading in is not sustainable. Okay? And each and every one of us who's paying attention to the direction that our country's going in, we're all frustrated because we don't know what to do. And all you have to do is take a look at my past statements. All you have to do is take a look at my history, look at where I came from to know that I am not a politician. That's why I've got this beard. It's because I want each and every person to see me. As soon as they lock eyes, they know that I'm different. Okay? They know that I'm not your standard politician. I bring new ideas to the table. I'm not doing this for power. I'm not doing this for money. I'm doing this for honor, for lack of a better word to put it on. And I know that might make you roll your eyes, but it's truly the mentality I have as somebody who served their country for so long that I can't let it happen without a fight. And I urge you and everybody you can talk to that if you are like me and you see these things and you are frustrated by them and you don't know what to do, I need you to reach out. Find me on Facebook, Matt Hasty for Congress. We need all the help we can get. The Republican successor has been chosen. The Republican Party's already decided who's going to. All you got to do is take a look at the FEC filings and how much money everybody's raised. We don't have money. Okay, I grew up poor and I'm not rich now. Okay, but we do have values. We have passion. Okay, so I need all the help you can give me. Reach out to me on Facebook, or you can go to gohasty.com, go hasty with an X, and look for us coming soon. We're holding town halls all across the district. Come on out, ask me a question. That's all I got.
want to say a big thank you to the Bespoke Barber,
Mr. Hamilton.
Mr. Hamilton, for
if you like the beard, I urge not to interrupt you. I want to give him a plug. I urge every gentleman in the area to come down here and get you a spa day. And I know what it sounds like, okay, but this gentleman's been trained in Italy on straight razor techniques, and I trust me, he'll explain to you what he's doing. But I'm not going to retain it all.
He just gave me the rundown of his hot towel shave.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely
blew my mind. If you don't fall asleep in the chair, I mean, I don't know what to tell you. It's very relaxing. And so if you get a chance, look him up, the Bespoke Barber, Mr. Hamilton in Monroe.
Can't thank him enough for allowing us to use his space. And thanks to you, Matt, again for coming on and giving me your time. So y'all check Matt out, and catch up with you next time.